Welcome back. This is week 5, and surprisingly enough, we're going to move backward with our elements and start with element 1, which just didn't fit with the structure of the rest of your course assignments for me and for your practicum. So we worked through some of those classroom management elements, and now we're coming back to element 1, which is what do I typically do to provide clear learning goals and scales, such as rubrics. And the specific statement is the teacher provides a clearly stated goal, learning goal, accompanied by a scale or rubric that describes levels of performance relative to the learning goal. So there are 2 different types of learning goals that you need to be aware of as we are going through the teacher evidence and student evidence. And you may have heard these in your other coursework, but just as a review, we're going to be talking about declarative and procedural knowledge as 2 very different things, but that can sometimes be combined into one learning goal. This all will apply when you are creating your unit plans, because the expectation will be that your unit plans include learning goals that accomplish learning goals in the area of declarative knowledge and procedural. So, as a review, declarative references what you are supposed to know and perhaps be able to restate, explain, describe. Those are more knowledge-based questions that involve just demonstrating understanding. Procedural knowledge requires you to actually do something. So you have not only acquired the knowledge of what it takes to do that task, and you can maybe retell it, that's still declarative, but procedural knowledge is to actually be able to do something. So declarative is know, procedural is to do. Those are key components for the rest of this course and for the rest of your unit planning for the rest of your lives. So teacher evidence of individuals who are actually good at creating learning goals that they're assessing using clear learning goal scales and rubrics would be that the teacher actually has a learning goal posted so that all students can see it. The learning goal is a clear statement of knowledge, either declarative or procedural, as opposed to it being an activity or an assignment. And there's the cat again. There she goes. So there is a difference between an activity, an assignment, and a learning goal. When we create our unit plans, we are going to create our learning goals first. The activities will come last because the activities are merely the vehicles for teaching the students what they need to know declaratively or what they need to be able to do procedurally. And then the performance of those learning goals, either by way of a procedural assessment or an assessment of declarative knowledge, would be your tools for assessments. And the activities are just what get you to that point. So you want to make sure that your learning goals are clearly either asking students to know something or do something. This teacher will make reference to the learning goals throughout the lesson. That seems obvious, but sometimes, such as when I believe in at least one section where we worked on the Padlet walls using the speed dating activity, my goal wasn't for you to know all of the content within the walls. My goal was actually procedural for you to be able to access that Padlet wall and utilize that resource. So that was a procedural goal, learning goal versus a declarative one. The teacher has a scale or rubric that relates to the learning goal posted so that all students can see it. And I'm going to share an example with you in just a moment of a specific scale or rubric that I use to teach and work on and assess collaborative work skills for cooperative learning groups. That will be our method for talking about that scale or rubric and what it needs to consist of. And let's see. I think we're ready for student evidence. I was distracted by the 17-month-old in the background. Student evidence. When asked, students can actually explain the learning goal for the lesson. They should be able to say to you, I'm supposed to know this afterward, or I'm supposed to be able to solve this afterward. They should be able to articulate that. When asked, students can actually explain how what they're doing relates to that learning goal, such as, oh, well, when I do this with these materials, it's supposed to show me how to do the next step. And then once I do all of those steps, I should be able to do the whole process by myself. So they should be able to see the connection to what they're doing, or between what they're doing and the intended learning goal outcome. And when asked, students should be able to explain the meaning of the different performance levels associated with the different elements of the scale within the rubric. So they should be able to understand that rubric and articulate back to you what that consists of. So I've already covered declarative and procedural knowledge, and there was one more item I wanted to include. Oh, just as another tip or trick before I share the one example with you, another tip or trick would be that you could ask students to create their own learning goals in relationship to maybe their social skills or self-regulation skills, like about being on task, or using turn-taking skills, or academically what they want to know or be able to do by the end of a lesson. So you do have that opportunity to have them write those goals and then self-assess at the end of the class to determine, or the end of the unit to determine if they've accomplished those goals. So, good tip or trick. Now, the example that I'm going to talk about happens to have to do with your professional learning communities as well as your unit plans and your IP creation groups and your mock case conference groups, because you'll be working in your PLC groups up until the midterm point exclusively. At the midterm point, I will be using a rubric called the Collaborative Work Skills Rubric that is actually useful across elementary, middle school, high school settings. I'll be using that for you to self-assess your group work with your peers throughout this experience. I was waiting until this element video to introduce it, so I'm sharing it. I'm going to ask that everyone watches this particular video just so the information is consistently presented to you. So within your Padlet wall selection list in Blackboard, you will find that there is a Padlet wall for assessment. The Padlet wall for assessment. That's the Padlet wall you're going to go to actually view the Collaborative Work Skills rubric. If you wanted to pause right now to make sure you had your Padlet wall open for that, you could do so, view the Collaborative Work Skills rubric, and be prepared to come right back to this and continue on with the discussion. If you chose not to pause right there, then I'm sure you'll go look at that as soon as the video is completed. But within the Collaborative Work Skills rubric, it includes areas such as attitude. It includes on-task behavior. Actually, on-task behavior is comprehensive across the board. Yeah. How about, I need to look at it and say it, focusing on the task, preparedness, pride, monitoring group effectiveness, working with others, your contributions to the group, the quality of your work, time management skills, and then, as I mentioned before, attitude and problem solving. So within each of those, there are 4 subcategories, and each of them, as you know, if you've seen a rubric before, which I know you all have, each of them corresponds with varying degrees of performance. So your purpose in using a rubric or scale like this would be to link the assessment to your learning goals. So my learning goals for you, declaratively speaking for your PLC group, would be to understand the behaviors that are necessary for a group to work effectively in a collaborative work situation, to be able to understand those, and be able to probably articulate that was how I would assess it. But if I wanted to know procedurally, your understanding of these elements, I would ask that I would see specific behaviors related to each of those scale elements within the rubric. I would see those performed. So procedurally, I would look to see, for example, for time management, I want to see that, since the first category within this scale is that you routinely use time well throughout the project, and to ensure things get done on time, the group doesn't have to adjust deadlines or work responsibilities because of this person's procrastination. That's my highest level of rating. So I'm going to be looking for evidence of that performance, in that these individuals turn items in on time, meet deadlines, and group members are not complaining about their particular time management skills. So they're on task throughout the class period when I actually get to observe a PLC group member working with their group. So there's far too many elements of that rubric to go through each of those in that manner, but I will assume that you are going to review that rubric and become familiar with it, so that when the midterm point comes and you're asked to self-assess your collaborative work skill performance within your PLC group, that you'll be able to complete that online for me when prompted, and that at the end of the semester you will do the same based on your unit plan group. which will also continue on and work on your IEP completion and your case conference completion. So you'll be completing that for yourself again, and then your peers will also assess you using the rubric, but none of the peer assessments will be used as part of your grade. So that's simply for my reliability ratings to determine if your perception of yourself is what your peers perceived you to be at as part of their group. So again, this is week 5, and that was element 1. What do I typically do to provide clear learning goals and scales? And within that Padlet wall, you'll see some of the resources that you can use as you're developing your own rubrics for classes. Thank you.